Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with Sean Pieri, a longtime fundraising and marketing executive and the author of 52 Thursdays. Sean shares how losing his job forced him to question his identity and rethink what success meant. We explore what he learned from calling one person from his past every week, including the value of deep listening, close relationships, and choosing a life that reflects your own priorities.
Hello, Sean. Tell me who you are and what you do.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
That's a very 90s thing to say, by the way, but yes.
Very much so. My name's Sean Pieri. For almost 4 decades, I've been a professional fundraiser and marketing executive, having held senior-level positions at universities across the country, a children's hospital, and the United States Olympics Committee. A few years ago, that my title got erased because I was let go from my job, completely unexpected, and I lost my identity because of that. And while most people, or by many metrics, people would consider my career a success, I was struggling internally with my identity being sort of stripped away of what the definition of success meant. And that led me to a resolution that I made a few years ago, a New Year's resolution, trying to figure out how do you determine what success is. And what I did is I made a commitment to reach out to a different friend from my past every single week. So 52 weeks, 52 phone calls, and to talk to them and figure out through their eyes what success was. And so I marked my calendar every Thursday, circled it, and every 52 Thursdays began to make calls. And that journey eventually not only helped me self-discover some things about myself, but it also really enhanced the idea of a reconnection and the power of reconnection and reaching backwards to sort of look forward in one's professional life. And it led to the writing of a book. It's called 52 Thursdays, 1 year, 52 calls, and the power of reconnection. It's also part of a movement, 52 Thursdays movement, where we asked a simple question: what would happen if you intentionally reconnected with somebody from your past once a week? What would you learn about yourself? What would you learn about them? What would it change? And I look forward to talking with you about that today, Scott.
So I didn't tell you this, but I'm 3 weeks into this.
You started making some phone calls?
I called a guy named Todd Brown, was a kid I went to high school with. And then I called a guy named Leonardo Alberto Facchetti, who also he was a really close friend, and a guy named Derek Barnett, also a very close friend that I knew after or high school and afterwards. And it was one of those things where I had no expectations. I haven't talked to anybody probably in, call it 25, 30 years. I mean, it's been a while, and it was, I've forgotten some stuff about myself. Right.
Well, it's fascinating because I talked to people who were 30 years removed from my last conversation, and the conversation seemed to pick up as we had talked last week. And I had no idea of what we were going to talk about in these calls. And what I found was that they weren't about business and career or anything like that. They pretty quickly delved into some very, deep topics. Basically successes and failures and triumphs and dealing with adversity. And it really was quite remarkable. Some of the secrets that some people shared with you along the way. So I'm glad you started. That's wonderful. I hope you reconnect with many more. You got 49 more to go.
It's funny. I got into a bit of a rhythm though, right? It's because this podcast, what I've done over 100 of, I find myself finding patterns and then just repeating the pattern, right? And one of those is like, how did life turn out for you? Right, was literally how I almost, maybe 5 minutes into it, and and then it was the kids, the marriage, or maybe divorces, or whoever you were talking to about the what's what, and it was definitely, and then 15 minutes it turns into remember that time kind of things, and then you end up discovering a bunch of stuff. So anyway, okay, so you have these experiences, you make 52 calls, over the course of a year. What was like? When did you notice the pattern? Right? When did you notice like Was it like the fifth call you were actually getting something out of it, or did it take a while to actually start asking the right question? Just kind of address that for a moment.
Yeah. So when I had the idea, I started writing down names. I wrote down a couple handfuls of names on a piece of paper. My first call was actually on January 4th, Thursday, January 4th of 2024. And I didn't think much of it. The call lasted an hour. It was a professional acquaintance of mine. And just, we had a nice call and we went forward. Second call, third call, fourth call. But by then these started to become really deep conversations. And I realized there was more there than just saying, "Hey, how are you? What you up to lately?" And so I started to take notes on the calls. And what they just started piling up. And after about 6-8 months, I realized that there was some real depth to these conversations. And I said, I had one call where it was a former teacher of mine. And she said, "I've never told anybody this before. However, I was dealing with mental health issues when you and your classmates were a part of my life. And you guys helped me overcome that." And so she gave me a secret from her past. And I never expected anything like that. And it was quite a bit of that depth of conversation. Didn't take long to figure it out. What became more interesting, though, is as I got closer to the end of the year and I realized they only had 5 or 6 or 10 calls to go, I'm like, well, I don't want to waste these calls. Who can I pick special for these calls to go even deeper into the conversations? So that became even a harder challenge of who to call and when and why.
Yeah, I mean, back to the whole reason, right, was the losing yourself because you had identified too much with your job. And, which is what we do because we spend so many, it's like, 8 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours a day for years and years and years. Well, of course you identify with it, but it's not right? It's not that's not the correct thing. And by doing these, I guess the original impetus was probably, I'm going to go figure out who I was, or maybe I kind of lost my way a little bit. My reconnecting these people, like, is that kind of the kind of thought process that brought you there? But because it's very deliberate. 52 calls is a lot of calls.
Yeah, I've keep making them. I've been making them, trying to make them every week. So I'm beyond 52 by far. I keep telling people now that I'm my 53rd. I got a lot of 53rds. Well, yeah, I lost my identity. Losing my job unexpectedly, it crushed me in more ways than I ever imagined it would. And it took me a while to rebuild my career. But when I did, it wasn't a linear upward trajectory like I had anticipated. It was sort of a step backwards. And it all turned out fine and worked for a great employer and everything like that. But it just didn't feel like that was the right step. And so, I had people when I would call them, they would talk about their life dreams. They would talk about their sense of purpose. They would talk, they would say to me, "I've never made much money, but I'm making a difference in my community doing this," or I'm spending time with my aging parents and giving up my career so I can spend more time with them while they're alive. And that sense of purpose really came out in a lot of the calls that we've had.
So, okay. So what, in the beginning, what you were hoping to get out of it, and in the end, what you actually got out of it, what was the delta between the two? Like when you started doing this, I think you had probably a certain set of expectations that, at the worst that's going to happen is that, I don't know, maybe I'll kick loose some understanding of, direction or whatever. But what was the actual outcome after doing it 52 times?
Well, I think first of all, I had no idea what to expect. And I thought, well, I'll just have some giggles with some old friends and neighbors and colleagues or whatever the case might be. I think for me, I rediscovered some things about myself. The number one thing, though, I think I realized the most was sort of this power of reconnection. I had no idea what I was going to talk to folks about, had no idea where the direction of the calls were going to go. In today's world, we can, do a heart emoji on a post, or we can text somebody or whatever the case might be. It's really easy to communicate, but it was really that connection in those deep conversations that I think we long for today in a busy environment that we're in. And that was one thing that really came through. I did not expect that at all. The second thing, and I think back to a conversation I had with somebody, a friend of mine named Gary, who was suffering from Parkinson's disease, and he's close to death. He actually has passed away since my call with him, on multiple calls with him actually, he basically said, Sean, you got to live while you can. Life's too short. He never imagined that his retirement would be spent confined to a bed, him unable to walk. He never imagined that he would be sort of a burden on his wife and the caregivers around him. And he's like, live while you can. There is no guarantee tomorrow. So that was a real message that came across as people told me that they were planning on traveling and basically saying, I'm done with the career. I'm going to go do something different now, whatever the case might be. And then the third thing, the message I think I probably took home more than anything is, don't let other people define what success is for you. Define it on your own. And the answer for you is different than me, but they're both correct. And you have great agency and ability to do that. And truthfully, my wife and I have done that since this book is started getting written. We've actually moved across the country, moved closer to family, put life ahead of career, which has been the first time in 4 decades that we did that. And so there's a lot of takeaways from this journey.
Yeah, it's funny. Like right now, I mean, if you think about like, I was when I graduated high school, I was 19 years old. It was like 1991 or something like that. And it was very analog, right? Everything was very, very analog. It just was. Okay. So like we grew up in a very comparatively analog time, right? If we left the house, our parents wouldn't hear from us unless we called them on the phone or we showed up, or the police called them, right? There was really only 3 options, and they would start calling around, hey, have you seen Scott anywhere? Like kind of calling around, and connections were not, they weren't optional, right? At least that kind of like one-to-one connection. And now we live in a world where it's all been kind of, I don't know, gray washed. There's no depth anymore. And it just I feel like this book addresses that lack of depth in communication.
Yeah. So the cover of the book, and we had fun with making the cover. We intentionally put an old-fashioned, an older phone on it, the one with the cord, the winding cord that goes around, and it harkens back to a simpler time, like you're talking about, where you had to be intentional about communication. You had to pick up that phone, you had to dial it to call somebody to reach out to them. And today, again, you can like a post, you can ping somebody, you can see them on LinkedIn or whatever, but that's not the connection. And it's interesting. I just received a text the other day from a friend of mine who was informing me that he was having triple bypass heart surgery. Former college roommate of mine, one of the 52 that I had talked to, but hadn't talked to in a while. And I got the text. I'm like, well, I could text him back saying hearts and prayer emoji or something like that. I'm like, no, pick up the phone and call him. And I did, had a great conversation with him. And that's the intentionality that I guess that's a fourth takeaway from this whole thing is I'm more intentional about going to see people, about spending time with friends and relatives and loved ones, about checking in on people, say, hey, how you doing? Just thinking about you. But it's that intentionality that gets lost today because you're right. We're climbing the career ladder. We're getting caught in the fog of whatever's out there. And the whole idea of the 52 Thursdays movement is, what if you actually picked up the phone intentionally once a week and call somebody? And I guarantee you they'll smile. My gosh, the number of smiles and laughs. I could see the people smiling through the phone. It was so, and they're like, this made my day. This is the best call I've had in a long time. I'm stealing this idea. I mean, the reactions I got were just phenomenal.
Yeah, you'll never get a happy birthday text from me. It's always a call. And
good
what's
for you.
funny
I'm an email text guy on the happy birthday, but mine's January 30th. So give me a shout.
So depending on the person, though, it gets received differently. If it's a Gen X, like, oh my God, hey, what's up, right? But if it's a 19-year-old or like one of my wife's, nephews in Belgium or something, it's like, oh hey, it's not as well received because they're like the texting generation, and I think that's I guess the takeaway that I got from your book is just do it, right? I mean, there's obviously other takeaways, but the biggest one is just go make the plan and go, because of the connection at the end. When we finally leave this earth, that was really all that we had, was the connection.
Yeah, I think that's another takeaway from the book. I talked to somebody. We were on a business trip 35 years ago in New York City, and I can't remember who we called on, what we talked about, but I remember the experience. We had a dinner at a great restaurant called Rosie O'Grady's. And I pick up the phone and I call him. I said, his name's Jeff. I say, Jeff, this is Rosie O'Grady. And his Irish brother, oh, Rosie, may the luck of the Irish be with you. And we remember that. And we remember the relationship. I couldn't tell you what happened on that business trip and stuff. That all fades back into the fine print in the back of our memory. So yeah, find a reason to reach out to somebody, not an excuse not to.
So if you could think of one call you've made in the last couple of years that was really jarring, because sometimes you call people and they're not a good spot.
Yeah.
I've got one in particular that I'm not going to talk about, but it was one of those like, no. Did you have any of those?
Yeah, I would say that I had 3 or 4 of those. One call I'll share with you. He's in the book. His name is GJ. And I caught him. I happened to call him on Cinco de Mayo. And we were catching up, and he's sounded down and depressed. He's on disability. He's a recovering alcoholic. He's tried to commit suicide. He's HIV positive. He's a dog walker in addition to his disability. He doesn't really have a friend circle. It's very downtrodden kind of conversation. Midway through the conversation, he told me that he reaches out to a psychic to get guidance in life. And so for $60, he gets 15 minutes and can ask 3 questions to the psychic. So I'm like, well, GJ, what are you going to ask him? He said, well, I want to know if I'm going to meet somebody and get in a relationship. I want to know how my health is going to be. And I want to know if I'm going to be audited by the IRS. So relationships, health, and money, those are typical conversations that you talk about. And I go, what did the psychic say? And he said, well, I'm going to meet somebody in the second half of July, and I'm traveling to see my friends and family in Chicago. So I'm in July. So I think I'm going to meet somebody there. I'm like, okay, what did he say about your health? He said, I'm going to hurt my left ankle. I don't understand it. My right shoulder bothers me, but my left ankle is completely fine. I'm like, all right. And what about the audit? He goes, oh, no, I'm not going to get audited. So of course, like 6 months later, I had to reconnect with him. I'm like, well, GJ, what the psychic? How did it turn out? And he said, I didn't meet anybody. And I said, well, the psychic didn't say what year. He just said the second half of July. So you got potential going forward. I said, how about your ankle? He goes, funniest thing, I twisted it walking the dogs. It laid me up for about 3 weeks. It was almost broken. And I said, have you been audited yet? And he's like, nope, haven't been audited. So you get somebody. I mean, what struck me there was there's nothing wrong with psychics and that whole thing. But when you turn to that's your only source of an answer, that was, and here's somebody who I met in my very first job. Our carols were right next to each other. We would go out in Chicago together when we lived there, and we were thick as thieves. And we've separated our lives. We've gone in completely different directions. And here's my friend who's just kind of down on his luck.
Yeah. And that's going to happen, but it's almost like there's value there too in terms of the relationship, right? He got something out of it, and you got something out of it too, but maybe not what you expected, right? You got maybe a different way of kind of looking at life or whatever. And it's, I don't know, I've definitely had those shock calls, not from this experiment I'm doing yet. I haven't had that shock call from the 3 I've called, but I've definitely had that checking on a friend thing. And it was just like, oh my God, my life is amazing comparatively. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky.
Yeah, I think I think you definitely feel that. I think with a call like that, and I had a couple others, it made me ask myself, well, what else did I ignore? What else was I unaware of by not communicating with my friends? What else was kind of hidden? It was like going back to my high school teacher. She was suffering mental health. I didn't know that. Why was I ignorant to that? What are the things that my friends were struggling with when we were close together, next door neighbors, or whatever the case might be? And so it's really taught me to be much more thoughtful and observant, and I guess more athletically listening to people as I go through these conversations.
Okay, let's address that real quick. Athletically listening to people. Please explain that for a moment. I'm an athletic listener. Pretty good. What's that mean exactly?
Well, I think you're an athletic listener. It's responding to it's asking questions based on the responses you get from other individuals and not being afraid to dig that next level deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's not just like shaking your head. Oh yeah, okay, I heard that next thing. You're really trying to go deeper down. It's, I told you from the onset, I'm a professional fundraiser. I've been doing that for almost 40 years. Yeah. Understanding how the person thinks about the future and their legacy and their motivations, that's the critical key to successful fundraising. So you have to be an athletic listener when you do that.
Yeah, the problem is that when we're younger, we're waiting to talk. And as we get older, we realize that we're not that special. And actually the interesting part is not what we say. It's actually what the people you're listening to are saying. But it takes a bit of it takes losing your hair. It takes getting a little fatter. It takes getting a little older. It takes a lot of things, right? And you realize you're like, I mean, that's the thing. My parents, I think they lied to me. They told me I was really, really, really unique and special. And then, right, I think that's maybe a symptom of partly of my generation. But then you get older, you're like, no, I'm not special. But the special is the actual communication you have with people and kind of like how you're perceived and how you perceive them and on and on.
What isn't it like 80% of us are above average or something like that? One of the things when I was in the process of doing this, we've got a picture on our wall and it's got a quote from the Velveteen Rabbit, the children's fable. Yeah. And the protagonist, the rabbit, is asking what it takes to be real. And he's asking his friend, the skin horse, the other toy, and your hair falls off, your eyes begin to droop, you become loose in the joints. It doesn't happen to people who are hard and stuff like that. And it happens over a long period of time. I think this calling journey helped me become real. And I would think that if you read the book, it's not going to give you answers. It's not a how-to or anything like that. It's designed to help make people think at a deeper level. And if you go the next step and become intentional about making calls and reaching out to that high school friend or that teacher who helped you along the way, or that colleague you shared an office with back, 20 years ago, or whatever the case might be, who you haven't talked to, you're going to become a little bit more real yourself by doing that.
It's enough allegories though to show you the way. I disagree. I think it is a how. Because we learn through examples and allegories, right? We're literally meant to learn from humans. I was listening to this New York Times on Sunday podcast called Hard Fork, and the guy was talking about how ever since we've added computers and to learning in high schools, that it's just progressively. You literally can peg it to like 1994, and then our learning ability has gone down to the point where they just started. Well, let's go reframe what learning is, right? They went back up the moment they go, oh. And it really comes down to we're built to learn from other people.
Well, that's like the nav system dumbing us down in our car, right? We don't know how to get anywhere anymore.
I never could though. Before that, my wife's, grandfather was a ship captain. I swear she'd go east. We could literally be in a dark room. And she's like, and me, I'm just like, I don't know. It's that way. Generally speaking, that way. I'm not very good with directions to begin with. But I think the GPS made it worse for sure.
Technology is your friend. So
it is not. It makes you hobbled. If it's gone, you're ruined. But it's. I'm going to try to get through. I'm going to make I'm going to make the promise to you. I'm going to get to at least 20. Okay. And I'm running out of people to how did you, at some point, don't you start running out of humans? I mean, I know hundreds of people, but I don't want to hear from 52 sometimes,
No, yeah. So what I did is I started by writing down maybe 20 names or so on the piece of paper. Those were the easy ones. I ended up not calling all those 20. What I found was during the course of the year, a song would come up or a conversation would happen that would trigger a memory. So for example, Willie Mays died. One of my mentors many years ago, he and I were talking, and he said, you never want to become Willie Mays with the Mets. And what he was referring to was arguably the greatest baseball player of all time, becoming a shell of himself, finishing out his career with the New York Mets, not being able to chase down fly balls or hit fastballs or whatever the case might be. He says, you want to get out before you become Willie Mays with the Mets. Willie Mays died on a Tuesday. I called that mentor on that Thursday.
That's interesting, right? Because you never know what's going to trigger the memory. And have you ever got the, hey, have you heard from ... And then you're like, oh, I should call them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall that triggering anything. I mean, it was, the names were they would come out of just, it seemed like thin air in some cases. But then the other side of it was, there were people who never called me back. I mean, one of the people who I hadn't talked to in years is my uncle, my dad's brother. My dad passed away a few years ago. I hadn't talked to my uncle. And I reach out to him, I call him up. I get a text back saying, I'm busy at work. I'll get to you later. Never heard back from him. And I'm like, And so, I'm gonna have to send him a copy of this book and say, hey, sorry you're not part of it.
Oh, by the way, I read this book partially because you did that to me. Thanks, Hunk.
This is Scott's podcast. You are, right. Bob.
Right, that's great. Bob, we're calling you out. Sean Pieri, we are out of time. Thank you very much for doing this. I'm on number 3. I'll see if I can get to 20 the next time we talk.
You got to get to 4 before you get to 20. Hey, 52thursdays.net. Sign up for the movement. Buy the book, available on Amazon, and just find the reason to reach out to somebody, not an excuse not to.
John, thanks for being awesome.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.